I mean, so when Pawn Stars, our very first episode, we were had the highest ratings of any show, any premiere ever on the History Channel.
Pawn Stars is changing fast, and not in a good way. What started as a simple Las Vegas shop has become a global hit. But now the losses are hitting hard. Richard Harrison is gone. Family tensions are growing, and rumors are swirling about Corey Harrison possibly stepping away.
Can I help you?
Hi. Yeah, I found this. I was cleaning out some drawers and stuff. My mother gave it to me years ago, and I was wanting to find out how much it was worth.
This thing looks crazy. What is it?
It's a black widow.
Is it poisonous?
Fans are asking the same question. Is this the beginning of the end? What really caused these painful departures? And can the show survive without its core family? Stay with us as we break down the biggest losses Pawn Stars has faced up to 2026.
I'll tell you what, I'll go 1,100 bucks on it. I mean, that's fair. It's gonna sit around here a while.
1,200.
1,100 is gonna be it. And I have cash money. $100 bills.
Sure, I'll do it.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Thank
let's
you.
go write this up.
Thank you.
Richard Old Man Harrison, the backbone of the shop. Richard Harrison, popularly called the Old Man, was more than just a random cast member on the show. Richard was the foundation for everything the Pawn Stars became. On screen, he lived a very disciplined life. While he wasn't all business, he just really enjoyed the no-nonsense, old-school vibe. But one thing was certain. The old-school, no-nonsense energy did not come from a vacuum. He had spent time in the military, but after spending all that time in the armed forces, he needed a whole new career, something he could build on after serving his country for 20 straight years. So he started a coin shop somewhere in Las Vegas in 1981, just 2 years after he left the military. However, his son, Rick, had other ideas. He pitched to his dad to make the logical progression from pawning silver and gold coins to everything a client had to offer. It didn't matter if it was old cars or some long-lost artifact from the glory days of the USSR. The Harrisons could handle it. By 1989, the father and son duo founded the shop together as co-owners, negotiating for antiques, bringing in experts when required to set a valuation, and making some serious names for themselves in the process. But he wanted more. He wanted a shot at reality television. So he pitched ideas to different television channels until the History Channel came knocking. And the rest, as they say, is history. By July 2009, the Gold and Silver Shop made its debut on television, under the franchise name Pawn Stars, immediately taking the American reality television space by storm. Their ratings soared through the roof with Richard's eccentric performances, his no-nonsense attitude, and his deliberate decision to give Rick hell over some decisions they couldn't seem to agree on, stealing the spotlight every time. But yet again, in a world where every man needs to play the hand they are dealt, nature always wins. By the age of 77, the eccentric Richard passed away after a long standoff with Parkinson's disease in 2018. As expected, fans did not receive the news of the death too well. Losing Richard felt like losing the founding figure, even though he was only a co-founder with his son, Rick. While fans of the franchise reacted with expected sadness to his death and what might become of his legacy, Richard Harrison was not the only loss to the reality show.
Hey, how's it going?
How you doing, sir?
Good. What do we got here?
I got something with George Washington's face on it. And all I can really tell you from George Washington, the man had wooden teeth.
It's definitely something. It's the wrong color for a quarter.
The painful death of Adam Harrison. Over the years, Pawn Stars became more than a simple reality television show. Over time, fans had formed rather strong connections not only to the show's superstar cast members, but also to members of their families, who sometimes cameo now and then. But some family members are much more than fringe, as they rarely appear on the set of Pawn Stars, and Adam Harrison was the perfect example of that. Adam is one of Rick's 3 sons who just never really had an affinity for the spotlight. Sources close to the Harrison family believed that Adam preferred to have his fun out of the camera's watchful eye. While the Harrison family wasn't particularly Hollywood popular, quite a few people knew who they were, and for Adam, even a few were still too many. But here comes the twist. Whether he embraced the spotlight or avoided it like the plague, he was still somewhere under the watchful eye of paparazzi and blogs that looked for some juicy news, or just anything at all on the squeaky clean Harrisons. Rumors had often suggested that his reasons for avoiding the spotlight could be tied to personal struggles he wanted to hide from the cameras, possibly protecting his family's image and hiding his reputation in one smart, singular stroke. But there was never anything to really bind him to some nasty scandal, except continued speculations. But his constant elusiveness from the media soon wore off on June 19, 2024, when he was reported dead. It was unexpected, unacceptable, and mind-boggling. The Harrison family's quietest celebrity was finally getting unveiled to the public, but only after a death. Only 6 years before his death, fans had mourned his grandfather, the old man. Hence, seeing his grandson die just a few years after him was enough to break the most resilient fans. For what seemed like the first time, social media wasn't picking sides or discussing a cast member's poor negotiating skills. His death was pulling every fan in the same direction, mourning and sympathizing with Rick, especially, who had not only lost his son, but also his father in the space of 6 years. But the twists get even worse for fans of the show when Rick reveals how his son died. The 39-year-old had reportedly died of a substance overdose, specifically methamphetamine and fentanyl. Social media exploded in disappointment, with questions directed to the Harrison family. Did they ever try to support him when he was suffering from addiction? According to Rick, he had taken him through multiple rehabilitation facilities in his 20s, trying his best as a father to set him on the straight and narrow. But nothing changed. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The dust had finally settled, and the people's favorite show had started to move on. But can they really move on with another sudden disappearance that no one saw coming?
Well, I can't do 500 on it when I'm going to maybe sell it for that.
I realize you need to
I
make
mean, you know,
money.
I'd give you like $200 for it.
Yeah, I'd like to get a little more than that.
Really? I'll tell you what, I'll give you 200 if it doesn't shoot, 300 if it does.
Okay, that's
All
fine.
right, sounds like a deal.
Deal.
Corey Big Hoss Harrison. The weight of legacy. Following the horrible demise of Adam Harrison, there have been many speculations about the inner struggles that were possibly pervading the Harrison family. Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, and Rick realized that struggle really early, but some of his kids just couldn't cope with the pressure, and one of them was Corey. Affectionately called Big Hoss, Corey was a completely different archetype from his late brother. He liked the spotlight and embraced it without fear. Unlike the regular folk who only knew about the art of pawning from far away, Corey had access to first-time transactions. He understood negotiations, the art of gaining the upper hand, and knowing the opposition enough to beat them when they haggle over prices. But Corey wasn't just talk. He knew how to play the game, and he enjoyed doing it. Although growing up under the tutelage of his father and grandfather, learning the art of pawning, something else troubled him deep inside. He had been in the gold and silver pawn shop before the History Channel's camera came into the picture, and everyone knew who he was. In that period, he had the leeway to make mistakes, taking on a transaction without thinking too much about public scrutiny. But now he was no longer just Corey Harrison. he had transitioned into Big Hoss, meaning that his success was just going to get as amplified as his errors. Corey seemed to have a little bit of both his father and grandfather somewhere in him. He was a super risk-taker like his father, Rick, but he also hated losing money. And if somebody in the firm did lose money, he was hounding them immediately. For context, Rick spent $5,000 on an Austin Healey car, which seemed like a good deal to him at the time. He believed he only needed $300 to fix it before fully selling it off and possibly making the company some really good money. However, after a post-buy repair charge study, he figured he was teetering on the edge of costing the company a lot more money than they were going to make off the car if he chose to repair it rather than sell it again as is. Big Hoss, with the backing of his grandfather at the time, had Rick on the ropes, and he laid into him, specifically calling him out for making a mistake that could cost the company financially. The tension is as thick as winter fog, clouding their family ties. All that was left were three businessmen in a room arguing about a mistake that could cost them money. But that was soon over, and it was business as usual. Fast forward into the mid-2020s. Big Hoss's appearance on the show featured a reduced on-camera role. At first, many considered it a one-off thing, but it was only a matter of time until a pattern began to form, leaving fans with more questions than answers. Was Big Hoss really planning on an exit? If that happens, will it only be Big Hoss leaving?
How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. What do you have here?
I have a set of rare, unproduced Care Bear cousins from Kenner.
Austin Chum Lee, Russell, Scandal and Transformation Arc. As fans watched the founding family, seemingly crumbling and tearing away from the show they had grown to love over the years, the focus shifted to other members of the franchise, like Chum Lee. He had been on the show for almost as long as Corey. They were childhood friends, and Chum Lee was accepted by the Harrisons. He was not the brightest bulb in the room or the smartest negotiator, leaving fans to wonder why the Harrisons often let him appear on the show. Was it just because he was Corey's friend, or was it something else? But here is the kicker about Chum Lee. Whether he was getting good deals or not, he had seriously infectious energy that often made the show more watchable, especially when the Harrisons began their usual dispute on operational decisions. Chum Lee was the comic relief, and he was exceptional at it. This ability to douse the atmosphere in some serious comic relief, knowing exactly how to time it, basically earned him a regular spot on the show, and it wasn't long before he became a fan favorite. Just like Corey, he had been working in the gold and silver pawn shop behind the counters before Pawn Stars became a thing. So he understood the business and knew how to keep the audience glued in his own way. Chum Lee had become an unmissable presence on the show since its inception. Hence, if he were to ever suddenly disappear, he would be missed, and questions would be asked. And in 2016, Austin was on a sudden hiatus from the show with no explanation really given to the public. It wasn't long before the rumor mills went into overdrive, churning up endless controversies until one suddenly stuck. However, it did not take long before the truth was released in public media. Hilarious and seemingly harmless Chum Lee had reportedly pleaded guilty to a possible gun possession felony charge and a misdemeanor for substance possession. The news was a bombshell. It exploded within the fan base and split hairs as expected, with some calling the charges bogus and a deliberate attempt to sabotage a thriving career, and others felt proven right that he was a monster hiding behind serious comedic timing. On the flip side, there was a silver lining. If he could stay out of trouble somehow until then, the felony gun charge would be removed, leaving him with a misdemeanor substance possession charge. Finally, his sudden disappearance from the show made more sense. Although he had finally returned, there was something else that haunted fans of the television franchise. Sources close to Big Hoss believed that he wanted out, citing a loss of faith in the show's repetitive patterns and his being typecast as a 23-year-old at the age of 41. For him, that ship had sailed. Soon, fans debated the possibility of Chum Lee leaving the show too, if his friend finally decided to move on. Is the 2016 disappearance possibly going to become his new reality? If major cast members like Chum Lee decided to leave, would historians and guest experts who were sometimes invited on the show be willing to stay?
Hey, old man, how you doing? I am passionate about the role and value of museums and the role of artifacts and how we can use that to learn about history.
Mark Hall-Patton, every Pawn Stars sage. Mark was not your regular historian. He had some serious style and elegance that immediately drew attention to him like a moth to a flame. Specifically, it was the beard. He had a beard so elegant, it earned him the moniker, the Beard of Knowledge. While he was on the show, he was impossible to miss. How could anyone miss a stocky, gray-bearded man in a red shirt and a wide-brimmed Amish hat? Mark, just like Chum Lee, has always had something more natural than anyone else on the show, keeping him more instinctive and always ready to answer a question. He is a historian after all. However, he was also a museologist, a music director. Could Pawn Stars have realistically done better than him as a research and antiquities expert? Well, the fans absolutely do not think so. Mark had deep knowledge of antiques, and a raspy voice kept anyone interested every time he appeared. It was no surprise that he had shot north of 140 episodes on the show. He joined the show right on the debut in 2009, where he was asked to confirm the authenticity of an old military uniform, which reportedly belonged to General Oscar Griswold. However, aside from the near-encyclopedic knowledge and well-groomed beard, he had something else that made him special. He had an odd respect for collectibles regardless of the century they were from. Hence, he never evaluated them for prices. Even though the Harrisons had encouraged him to put a price on some of the items they often got at the pawn shop, he always turned them down, telling them that no price would ever be enough to pay for the joy of the thrill and the intrigue of discovery and collecting. But while Mark had become a constant sight on the show for well over 16 years, he was suddenly taking reduced on-screen roles. Although he still showed up now and then, fans believed that the consistent sighting of the Beard of Knowledge was starting to falter. In a bid to make sense of what seemed like a veiled sense of departure, fans speculated and whispered rumors of personal health problems, which wasn't uncommon for a man his age. However, it was soon revealed that he had resigned from his position as a museum director at Clark County, and also started to make a lot more appearances on Pawn After Dark, where fans get a behind-the-scenes reveal from one of the founding members of the franchise. While this was near enough to account for the times he had missed on the main show, fans speculated the worst. The Beard of Knowledge might be disappearing from the screen after all. Are there any original cast members who might be following Mark out the door?
It's pretty. I mean, I just don't know what it's worth.
Well, I'll tell you. Did you get a good price?
$240.
$240. Well, I'm gonna say probably bidding.
Rick Harrison, a legacy on a downward spiral. Talking about legacy and loss, Rick Harrison stands at the very top of the pile. Having lost his father in 2018 to Parkinson's disease, and his son to the debilitating effects of substance misuse just 6 years later. However, he forged on like a good soldier, keeping his and his late father's dreams alive by keeping the gold and silver pawn shop afloat. Already, he had lost 2 of his greatest allies. But Corey's recent confession about not coming back to the franchise only rubbed more salt on the wound. While they never really saw eye to eye on certain operational principles in some cases, they almost always found a way to make it work. So why should he leave now? Maybe it took a while, but realization had started to hit him all over again. He was almost right back where he started, alone. But somehow, in this case, he had Chum Lee, who was reportedly staging a comeback. Chum Lee was mostly family, but mostly is never enough with blood and familial ties now, is it? The fan base had always had Big Hoss as the successor to the Harrison family shop. Its fame, the money, and, more importantly, the future of the franchise. But what happens when a man primed for succession says no to his role? Rick is left with the burden of continuing the Harrison family legacy alone. However, after the 24th season of the show, he announced that the cast members were taking a long break from Pawn Stars. To most fans, it seemed rather out of character for Rick. The show rarely took a long break from filming, at least not without some serious reason to boot. However, unconfirmed insider sources have suggested ending the show. While it wasn't confirmed, their reason was basic, yet understandable. Rick claimed that their contract with the History Channel was over, meaning they needed to wait to see if filming resumes or not. But insiders believe that his reasons for the hiatus transcend the History Channel's decision. As much as he found fame and made some serious friends along the way, he had also paid a rather heavy toll during the duration of the movie, losing 2 members of his family. And now, the possibility of his son pulling away from him, wanting nothing to do with the same franchise he built his brand on. Suddenly, the Harrison family legacy looks bleak. Whether Rick finds a way to get Corey back in the fold, or simply lets the whole show go eventually, only time will tell. Do you think the franchise could be coming to an end? How impactful were these deaths and disappearances really on Rick Harrison? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.